before we go 30 minutes.
Hey guys, Willie with Decks and Dice. This is our first deck tech video. Today we're going to be going over Voja, Jaws of the... Sorry for the glare. Voja, Jaws of the Conclave. Released in Murders of Karlov. Voja is a 5/5 legendary creature, wolf. She costs Naya and 2. Whenever Voja attacks, you put X +1/+1 counters on each creature you control, where X is the number of elves, and then draw a card for each wolf you control. So Voja is super strong. She came out in I believe, the pre-release packs, but it's not in the actual set itself, which is a little weird. But I'm going to go over how I would build Voja. Personally, I prefer staying away from the elf ball build and focusing more on a budget build with wolves added in there evenly with the elves, just so you're getting a little bit of both out of the deck. So starting out, I'm going to go over our creature base, which is obviously, this is a creature heavy deck, so it's pretty extensive, but nothing too crazy. Again, this is a budget build, so most of your cards here aren't going to run you too much as far as the price of building this deck. So we're going to start out with the wolves that you're going to want to grab. And then go from there. So goal of this deck is to spit out a bunch of creatures early on, get Voja out, and then just start swinging wide. You can swing for multiple opponents or just one, but all of them are going to get boosted as soon as Voja is declared for attack. So starting out with the first one is Rotwolf. So Rotwolf's really good. It's a 3-drop 2/2 with Infect. Whenever a creature is dealt damage by Rotwolf this turn and it dies and is put into a graveyard, you get to draw a card. Next is Watchwolf. It's a 2-drop vanilla 3/3. It's good early on, especially for getting your Voja trigger draws. I definitely recommend it. Another one's Young Wolf with Undying. It's a 1/1. So this one it's hit or miss with this one, unfortunately, because Voja does give it a +1/+1 counter. The Undying doesn't do a whole lot. But if you have it early on and you just want to have a creature out on the board and then use it for a chump blocker, it'll come right back for you. Next we have Lone Wolf. Lone Wolf is a 3-drop 2/2. You can have it deal combat damage to a player as though it weren't blocked, which with Voja on the board, it gets pretty big pretty quick and you put it out pretty early. Another one is Sacred Wolf. This is a 3/1 for 3. It comes with Hexproof, which is kind of nice. Also, just a cheap card that you can throw in there. Speaking of cheap cards, Tundra Wolf is a 1-drop 1/1 with First Strike. Not impressive by itself, but with Voja, you're going to be able to pump it up and kill things pretty quickly before they can kill you. Let's see. Another good one is Ascended Pack Leader. Another 1-drop 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on it if you control a permanent with mana value 4 or greater. And whenever you cast a permanent with mana value 4 or greater, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So it'll boost itself up, and then Voja will boost it up even higher. Sarulf's Packmate. It's a good Foretold card if you need to get out of your hand. Plus, it replaces itself once you draw a card. So This one's interesting. This is a pretty decent one in the deck for alternate damage. So it's Runebound Wolf. It's a 2-drop with the tap ability for 1 and 3. You can tap it and deal damage equal to the number of wolves and werewolves that you control to target opponent. If you can get some sort of way to get infect on it, it can easily kill an opponent. I don't personally run infect in here, but if you want to do that, this would be a great card to attach something to. Next one is Assembled Alphas. Whenever it blocks or becomes blocked by a creature, it deals 3 damage to that creature, 3 damage to that creature's controller. It is a 6-drop though, so it is a little high, but it comes out as a 5/5. Next we have Scourge Wolf, a 2-drop with Delirium and First Strike. If you have 4 or more cards of different card types in your graveyard, it gains double strike. With Voja, that's a lot of damage. Especially early on as a 2-drop, you can put it out there pretty quickly. Hungry Ridge Wolves. As long as you control another wolf or werewolf, it's going to get +1/+0 and trample. You're going to have wolves out. If you have Voja out, it's going to get the boost and trample, so it's a good way to get damage through. Arlen's Wolf is another decent one. It's a 3-drop, 3/2. Can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, so those chump blockers can't do anything against it. Wandering Wolf, 2-drop, 2/1. Creatures with power less than it can't block it. If you have enough elves and wolves on the board, it's going to get big, and they're just not going to be able to stop it once it goes through. Next we have Wolf of Devil's Breach. I debated putting this in here, but I found that this is just good targeted removal. Especially if you have high CMC cards in your hand, you can't really do anything with them at the point. That 2 mana to just discard it and deal a good bit of damage is pretty nice. And it targets creatures or planeswalkers, so it does give you a little bit of versatility there. Next we have Primal Adversary. So this is one of those ones that if you're willing to put the mana into it, it does pay off, especially in Voja. So it's a 3-drop, 4/3 with trample. Whenever it enters the battlefield, you can pay 2, a green and 1, any number of times. When you do, you put when you pay this 1 or more times, put that many +1/+1 counters on Primal Adversary. Then up to that many target lands you control become 3/3 wolves with haste that are still lands. So this is a good game ender, if or just a good way to draw into stuff. It does leave you open for land destruction, so play it wisely. Next we have Cemetery Prowler. Cemetery Prowler is good graveyard hate. We all know that people love to play with their graveyards, and this kind of just shuts it down a little bit. It's a 3-drop, 3/4 with Vigilance. Whenever it enters the battlefield or attacks, exile a card from a graveyard. Bonus, spells that you cast cost 1 less for each card type that the card shares with the card that's exiled. So if you exile a creature, it's going to make all your creatures 1 less, which is really nice. Same with instants and all the other card types. So next I want to move on to, no, I'm sorry, there's 2 more wolves that we have to go over. Next one is Lightning Wolf. So this one is just a filler really. You could fill it in with another elf or something. I personally like it just for the first strike capabilities. For 2 mana, it's okay. You could leave it, you could take it. I personally really enjoy it in the deck. And that first strike ability has come in handy more than once. Then we have Ferocious Pup, my favorite card in the deck. When it enters, You create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. For 3 mana, you get a 0/1 and a 2/2. They're both going to get boosted off of Voja. They're both going to draw you cards. It's just an easy add into the deck and a underplayed card. Next, we're going to go over the elves. So, what would Voja be without Tolsimir? So, we're running Tolsimir's Midnight Light. This also came out of the same set as Voja, but it comes in the main set. When it enters, you create Voja Fenstalker, a legendary 5/5 green and white wolf creature token with trample. And whenever a wolf you control attacks, if Tolsimir attacked this combat, target creature and opponent controls blocks that wolf this combat if able. It's a good way to get combo pieces off the board. You swing Voja, you swing Tolsimir, put their creature that. Put their commander, any creature you really want that they don't want to block with, put it in front of it. It's probably going to die, and that trample damage is going to ping on through and still hurt them. Next we have Tolsimir Wolfblood. It's a good Lord card. It is expensive as a 6-drop, but most of the Tolsimirs are. You see, he's a 5-drop. This one's a 6-drop. The effects are really good though. Other green creatures get +1/+1. Other white creatures get +1/+1. And you can tap it to put a 2/2 green and white wolf creature token onto the board named Voja. Tolsimirs are great. You're getting an elf and a wolf at the same time, which is just making Voja a very happy commander. Next is Tolsimir Friend to Wolves. Again, expensive as far as creatures go. But as soon as it enters, it's going to give you a 3/3 wolf. So in reality, you're paying 5 mana for 2 creatures, which isn't bad. It also gives you a good fight mechanic in the game. Whenever a wolf enters the battlefield under your control, gain 3 life, and then that creature fights up to 1 target creature you don't control. With the way the deck works, it's good targeted removal. Especially if you're putting out a bunch of 2/2 wolf tokens, you just start throwing them in front of stuff and then gaining life off of it. So moving on from Tolsimir, we have Selvala, Explorer Returned. Everybody knows what Selvala does. She's a 3-drop 2/4 Elf Scout. You could tap her and each player reveals the top card of his or her library. For each non-land card revealed this way, add a green mana and you gain 1 life. And then each player draws a card. It's great. It's good mana ramp. It's good life gain, and everybody gets to draw a card. So your opponents are going to thank you for that. Next, we have Elvish Archdruid. We do run a good bit of elves in the deck, so having Elvish Archdruid in there, 1, buffs up our elves. 2, you're going to add more green mana, which is a lot of what the deck runs. So, next we're going to run Elvish Warmaster, 2-drop 2/2. Whenever 1 or more elves enter the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 elf. It does only trigger once, but the benefit, if you have a bunch of mana to pour into it, your elves are going to get +2/+2 at Death Touch, and Voja's just going to make them bigger. So you can't go wrong with it. I also ran Viridian Zealot. It's a 2-drop 2/1, gets it out early. Plus, you can sack it to destroy target artifact or enchantment. Good removal is key in this deck, especially if they're going to be removing your stuff. You need to do it right back and keep it on an even playing field. Next is Gyre Sage. It's going to get bigger as things enter. It's a 2-drop 1/2, and you can tap it to add a green for each +1/+1 counter on it. With Voja on the board, she gets big. She taps for a lot of mana, which is just going to help you progress further into the game. Next, we have Wildborn Preserver. 2-drop with Flash and Reach, so it does block some flying creatures for you. Whenever another non-human enters the battlefield under your control, you can pay X. If you do, put X +1/+1 counters on it. It gets bigger with Voja. I mean, it's another elf. It's got reach, so you're going to be able to protect yourself from some flyers. And you can make it bigger even if Voja's not on the board. Next up is Pelt Collector. Another +1/+1 counter synergy thing. So whenever another creature enters the battlefield or dies, if the creature's power is greater than Pelt Collector's, you put a +1/+1 counter on it. And then as long as it has 3 or more, which with Voja, you're definitely going to get 3 +1/+1 counters on it. It's going to gain trample. It's just another way to push damage through. Next we have Rada, Heir to Keld. Whenever it attacks, you're going to get 2 red mana, and you can also tap it for a green mana. Super cheap to play. It's a 2-drop, 1 green, 1 red. It's going to feed Voja. You're not going to be sad to have a mana dork in there, just to push ahead in the game as far as your mana curve goes, because Voja does get expensive. Llanowar Loam Speaker is next. So this is another elf 2-drop. It's a 1/3, so it does have decent toughness. You can tap it for a mana of any color, and then you can also tap and target land you control. It becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with haste until end of turn. It's still a land. You can only activate that as a sorcery. Really, we're just running it because it's an elf and it does tap for mana. A lot of these elves you can easily switch out with some basic mana dorks if you really want to get some more mana ramp in there. I find the deck runs pretty well though, just as is with only a few. Next we're going to run Fleetwood Dancer. It's a 4-drop 4/4, Naya and 1. It's got trample, lifelink, and haste. It's already pretty big and it feeds into Voja more, so it's just going to get bigger and gain you more life and push damage through. Next is Rex Sage. We all know what Rex Sage does. Enters the battlefield, destroy target artifact or enchantment. More removal, and it feeds Voja. So I definitely think that if you're running that, you'll definitely see it play very often. Next is Ren Run Packmaster. So this is one of the more synergy based cards in this deck. So you champion an elf when it enters. If you don't, you have to sacrifice it. Whenever that creature leaves the battlefield, whenever this creature leaves the battlefield, you return that card to the battlefield. It has a mana filter ability, or I should say a mana dependent ability, where you can pay green and 2 to put a 2/2 green wolf creature token on the board. It also gives all your wolves Death Touch. So with that, Voja's obviously going to get Death Touch. All the wolves you're smacking out on the board are getting Death Touch. And it's going to be very hard for them to stop them as they're getting pumped up and gaining Death Touch at the same time. Next we have Roko, Cabaret Caterer. Naya and X. When he enters the battlefield, if you cast it, you can search your library for a creature card with mana value X or less and put it onto the battlefield, and then you shuffle your deck. I find he's really good, especially if I have an early game and I can't get any wolves onto the battlefield to go get Ferocious Pup and put a 2/2 out on the board. So in reality, I'm paying 6 mana for 3 creatures. And then, you swing with Voja, you're going to draw 3 cards and put a +1/+1 counter on everything, bare minimum. I've definitely seen a lot of use for him in this deck. I know a lot of people play him, but in this deck he really does shine. Next is our Master of the Wild Hunts. So at the beginning of your upkeep, create a 2/2 green wolf creature token. And then you can tap on all untapped wolves you control. Each wolf tapped this way deals damage equal to its power to target creature. That creature deals damage equal to its power divided as its controller chooses among any number of wolves. This is just a good way to capitalize on the huge power that your wolves and your elves are going to have, while also making sure, because of Voja, it's going to have more effect you know, they're going to try and throw damage back, but most of your wolves are they're just going to be too big. So next we're going to move on to our instants and sorceries. Which, oh, I'm sorry, we also forgot a creature. So we also run Wolfbriar Elemental. 4-drop Elemental with Kicker. Whenever it enters the battlefield, put a 2/2 green wolf creature token onto the battlefield for each time it was kicked. If you have a ton of excess mana, pour it into Wolfbriar. It's going to be a lot of card draw. Even if you only kick it once or twice, you know, you're putting 2 wolves out there. You're paying 6 mana for 3 creatures. It's 2 mana per creature. That's not bad. That's a very good mana curve on that. I definitely suggest running this. Sorry guys, I missed more creatures. Gallagreeters. Everybody knows what Gallagreeters does. It was way overprinted in New Capenna as the box topper. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, choose one. If it hasn't been chosen this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on Gallagreeters, create a tapped treasure token or gain 2 life. It's just good options. We're running a bunch of stuff in there. We're putting a bunch of creatures out. There's no reason that we can't get all 3 abilities off each turn, typically. Next is Immaculate Magistrate. 4-drop 2/2. You can tap her and put a +1/+1 counter on target creature for each elf you control. She's just good to use to tap and put onto Voja for more damage. Commander damage is a big thing in this deck. It's killed my opponents more than once, and she has definitely pushed that along. Alright, so moving on to our instants and sorceries. So we are running Sundering Growth, Swords to Plowshare, Nature's Chant, Signal the Clans, Beast Within, and Return of the Wild Speaker for instance. If you want, I would say throw a couple more in there, but for the most part, we're going to be taking out almost all of our opponent's creatures through combat. We all know what Swords to Plowshare does. Return of the Wild Speaker lets you draw more cards, but it also functions as a pump up for all of your creatures because we don't run any humans in here. So non-humans you control are going to get +3/+3. Signal the Clans is a good budget search card, especially in this deck. You search your library for 3 creatures, reveal them. If you reveal 3 cards with different names, choose one of them at random and put that card into your hand. Shuffle the rest into your library. You can choose any 3 creatures in here, and it's usually going to help Voja. If you need wolves, search for 3 wolves. If you need elves, search for 3 elves. As long as they're going to have different names. You're going to get one of them for 2 mana. It's not bad. It's the same as a Eldamri's Call for the most part, just maybe not quite as good. Next is Sundering Growth. Destroy target artifact or enchantment, then populate. We run a good bit of token in here, so having this in there is going to help us just create another one and deprive our opponents of a resource that they have. Nature's Chant, same thing, destroy target artifact or enchantment, we just don't populate. And then Beast Within, destroy target permanent, its controller creates a 3/3 green beast. So we do run a good bit of removal in here between creatures and instants. So if there's an issue on the board, most of the time you'll be able to get to it, especially with Voja and her draw capabilities. You should have no issue actually getting into the cards that you need. As far as getting Voja out though, for ramp, we're running a pretty small package. Cultivate, Kadama's Reach, Migration Path, and Rampant Growth. Doesn't really need a whole lot more than that. Make sure you have at least 3 lands in your hand starting out, and you should be good to go. As far as utility goes, we have Shamanic Revelation, Harmonize, and Camaraderie. These are all going to draw you cards, and 2 of them gain you life. Camaraderie also gives your creatures +1/+1. In this deck, they're pretty decent, especially these 2 for your life gain aspect. For some oomph in the deck, we have Sylvan Offering. Choose an opponent. You and that opponent create an XX green tree folk creature token. And choose an opponent. You and that player each create X11 green elf warrior creature tokens. It's just good, guys. You play that, you then go into combat, swing with Voja. Your elves are bigger than theirs, your tree folk's bigger than theirs. You're not going to have an issue where you look at it and go, oh, they have a bunch of creatures now. Just choose who you give them to wisely. It's a great bargaining chip as well. I haven't seen it backfire on me yet. Next we have Decimate. Decimate's great for 4 mana. You get to take out 4 targets. Just remember with this card, there's a time to play it, and it's when there's valid targets for each one. If you do not have a valid target for each one, you cannot play this card. So there needs to be an artifact, creature, enchantment, and land that you want to target. Otherwise, you're going to end up blowing up your own stuff because you don't have any options. And then Idyllic Tutor. This will let us search out for an enchantment. There are a few enchantments in here that we definitely want to see out as early as possible just to accelerate our gameplay, which I will be going over next. Enchantment-wise, we are running Wolfcaller's Howl. It's a 4-drop. At the beginning of your upkeep, put X 2/2 green wolf creature tokens onto the battlefield, where X is the number of opponents with 4 or more cards in their hand. At a pot of 3 or 4, you're going to see 2 to 3 wolves a turn, sometimes a little less, just depending on how early you get it out and how many cards they have in hand. Next is Feed the Pack. This is probably one of my favorite cards in the deck. So at the beginning of your end step, you could sacrifice a non-token creature. If you do, put X 2/2 green wolf creature tokens onto the battlefield, where X is the sacrifice creature's toughness. So if you've got creatures out there and you've been pumping it up with Voja and you just really want to draw out your entire deck, that's definitely a way to do it. It's going to get you a bunch of resources, put a bunch of creatures on the board, and they're just going to get pumped up continuously thanks to Voja. Next is Ranger's Class. 2-drop. Whenever it enters, create a 2/2 wolf creature token. You can level it up for 2 mana and put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature whenever you attack. And then you can level it up to level 3 for 4 mana and look at the top card of your library at any time. You can cast creature spells from the top of your library. This is going to help you out a lot, especially if you're not drawing into creatures. Top deck manipulation is always great. And speaking of that, we are also running Cabaretti's Ascendancy. Naya to play. At the beginning of your upkeep, look at the top card of your library. If it's a creature card or planeswalker card, reveal it, put it into your hand. If you don't put that card into your hand, you may put it at the bottom of your library. It's a 3-drop, add to hand. If you don't like it, or if it's not what you need as in a creature, and you don't want it and you're trying to get into creatures, put it to the bottom of your library. Next is artifacts. We have obviously Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Commander Sphere, and we are also running Chromatic Lantern. We don't run a huge artifact package. We don't. You don't really need to run a huge artifact package in this deck. You're going to draw into your lands. You're going to draw into mana dorks. Chromatic Lantern is in there just in case you do have issues with certain mana. The MVP card in this deck is Mask with Nexus. Creatures you control are every creature type. The same is true for creature spells that you control that aren't on the battlefield. And creatures that you own that aren't on the battlefield. It is a 4-drop. You can also pay 3 to tap it and create a 2/2 blue shapeshifter creature token with Changeling. This is great in this deck. All of your elves are going to count as wolves. All your wolves are going to count as elves, and you're gonna get out of control. As soon as it enters the battlefield, you are threat number 1 if you weren't before. So last thing is we're going to go over the land base. Land base is mostly basics for you guys. There are some dual lands in here. They are the cheaper versions, -1. So we do run a lot of green and white creatures in here with the elves. So we are running Sungrass Prairie, Sun Petal Grove, Canopy Vista, Selesnya Sanctuary, and Temple Garden. For our Gruul, we are running Cinderglade, Game Trail, Mossfire Valley, and Temple of Abandon. We aren't really running any Boros in there. It's not a combination we really see in any of our cards. Most of our cards are going to be Gruul or Selesnya. For other lands, we are of course running Command Tower, Exotic Orchard, and then for searching stuff out, we are running Evolving Wilds and Croson Verge. Croson Verge is great because you go and get Cinderglade and Canopy Vista, or even Temple Garden, and you've got all 3 of your colors available to you. Obviously not at the same time, but they are available to you. Lastly, for basics, we are running nine forests, 6 plains, and 6 mountains. I've found this combination works for the deck. I haven't really had any mana issues with it. Total land count you're looking at is $34, which isn't bad. If you run some more artifacts in there or some more mana dorks, you might be able to trim it down to 30, 32 if you want to put some more creatures in there as far as elves go. But this is my version of Voja Jaw of the Conclaves. The deck list will be posted at more in the video. Please let us know if you'd like to see another deck tech or one that we have not posted yet, and we will see what we can do. But thank you for watching, and don't forget to press that like and subscribe button for Decks and Dice.